What are the
Sure.
main challenges of your current business model? And, and do you think that your business model as it is now is really sustainable long term? And what is your challenges over that?
So, yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. And if I can, just so I can give some context so people can see the answer in that context. So, as you put up earlier, we run a health tech business. We produce software solutions for the privately insured market and predominantly play in, for this example, I'll just stick to the private practice, the whole claims to the switch and the pharmacy, etc. So that whole ecosystem. And so when I talk, at least you have a view of what is the problems and challenges I'm trying to solve. And also to understand that, we've been around for just more than 35 years and successfully run business, profitable business. So when I refer to it, when I took over the business, we took a long and deep look at what were these challenges that you're talking about, and I think that's when we met. And of course, if you look at a traditional model that's been built over 30 plus years, we call it a pipeline model. Think of a linear pipe where you've got a good solution for one type of client, right, a stakeholder. And over the years, we've built a really good business on that, right? So enjoys, dominant market share, processes the bulk of the medical claims in the industry, and is in more ways than one the standard in private practices. So when we look at this challenge of what we call a pipeline model, and I'm simplifying what a pipeline model looks at, because in manufacturing it's much more complex. But in a pipeline model, once you get to a certain market share, then you've got to figure out, okay, why is my growth kind of flat? And of course, the business that we sit in, we want to grow the business year on year. We want to make sure we can give superior returns to our shareholders. So scaling that model became super difficult and very expensive. Because if you think of a pipeline model, to be successful like we had to own a fair amount of that value chain, right? So, and that value chain, to own it, meant that I had to invest in infrastructure, I had to invest in workforce and invest in people. And the only way I can scale it is by hiring many, many more salespeople. So I got to put in that, I got to actually put it on bigger and better infrastructure. And I think, as you said in one of your slides, the capital investment is massive. Okay, so that was part of the challenge. I do think we could scale it even a little bit more, but when you're running at the market share that we're running, it gets more and more and more expensive, and therefore you could pick up your sales, but your costs also pick up, and nobody wants that. Okay, so that's the issue that we were fundamentally facing when we had to go back to the board and say, look, we want to reposition this business. We also wanted to play in this ecosystem, but now if you've got a pipeline model, you've got one solution for practices, one solution for pharmacists, one solution for schemes. I'll just choose 3 in the ecosystem. How do you actually join them? And how do you actually talk about that ecosystem that you wanted to? And we knew we wanted to orchestrate that, but we couldn't with the architecture, the technology, the infrastructure, and nobody wants to spend hundreds of millions to rewrite all these systems, and that's what it would have taken. Now, the other part of the challenge is that in this healthcare ecosystem, the most important player, the patient, is left out, if you think about it, right? And we wanted to desperately get to the patient because we wanted to unlock the pain points that you talk about, and I'll talk, if I get a chance later to talk about some of that. So we couldn't pivot this business. And that's a challenge, right? Because now you've got a business model that's good market share, but flat. Mm-hmm. And now you can't address the key player in this industry who's really getting sick, which is the patient, right? So that was, an issue. We also looked, as competition comes in, and you spoke about it earlier, but our solutions get commoditized, right? The value proposition gets eroded. I think for me, I hate to, nobody wants to compete on price only. So the value proposition and price, sort of that equilibrium was getting messed up, right? So we were really battling with that sort of balance. And therefore, over time, and we modeled it actually, that in a few years' time we would have actually flipped the business the other way, where we were losing more than we were winning in the market when it comes to market share. And that was a huge problem. And I think you asked, is it sustainable? I think it's kind of obvious, right? If we did nothing, I think, it would have been a very different bad outcome. The churn would have hit us even harder because I can't keep on giving price points away and the competition will just eat you up. So that's kind of the context, if that answers the question.
Thank you.